Buenos dias.
Buongiorno.
Ohayo gozaimasu.
Xin chào.
Good morning to all VMSA. This is just a reminder to break the language barriers and let our culture unite people. But first, let me ask you something. What is your perception of yourself? Are you aware of the fact that culture, as a treasure, is a part of your perception toward yourself? This is all about our current discussion, importance of cultural relativism in attaining cultural understanding. I guess something is not clear. Are you having a blurry vision today? Don't worry, since our group will serve as a set of glasses through which you will see your life. Now let's begin with the two primary factors that shape the behavior of human groups: environment and history. What affects a person's behavior? Simply, it is influenced by beliefs, practices, and material possessions. Human traditions are formed by consistent practice and are passed down from generation to generation. Then, we will encounter the word difference, which results to cultural variations. A difference in environmental conditions will greatly affect how people act and experience things. An example of this is a difference in climate. Eskimos of Alaska wear thick layers of garment made of animal fur in order to keep themselves warm, while Maasai of Kenya wear loose, single-layer clothes made of cotton to keep Africans comfortable despite of the hot climate. Next is nationality, a group of people who share the same history, traditions, and language, being born in a country or by the process of legal applications called naturalization, the process by which a person becomes a citizen of another country. Ethnic groups, people who share a common cultural background, traditions, ancestry, language, history, society, culture, nature, religion, nation, or social treatment within their residing area. Filipinos are Pacific Islanders, so it's not surprising to know that there are many ethnic groups in the Philippines that shape the culture and traditions of the country. From the largest group Tagalog to the minority groups Ilocano, Kapampangan, Bicolano, Cebuano, and more. Many differences are linked to social categories such as gender, socioeconomic class, social class and economic status, political identity and religion, and this will be discussed by my other members. Now I hand the microphone over to Ms. Garcia to continue our discussion on our first social difference.
Thank you, Ms. Lahom. Hi, I am Maria Giselle Garcia, and I will be the one who will enlighten you guys about gender, sex, LGBTQI, and lastly, the several types of gender based on a person's orientation. As you can read here in our PowerPoint, gender refers to the constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes that a given society considers appropriate for men and women. We all express our gender sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously. We convey our gender to others in a variety of ways, such as through our appearance, movements, hairstyle, and the way we interact with others. Gender is a range of characteristics of femininity and masculinity. It is formed from time we were born, from the clothes we wear, to the food we eat, to the types of work we do, with the colors like pink and blue, and many more. It is also based on society, culture, and most importantly, our gender identity. Gender identity is your internal sense of self regardless of sex assigned at birth. Example, for transgender people, their sex assigned at birth does not match their expected gender. Speaking of sex, in general terms, it refers to the biological differences between males and females, such as their reproductive organs and genetic differences. In short, gender depends on our own will and personal preferences, while sex depends on our biological attributes. In some societies, gender becomes a basis of one's identity, as the social norms allow for their acceptance or neglect by the majority of the population. In cases of neglect, Individuals subscribe to alternative genders, create communities where they can attribute their thoughts and aspirations. One of the examples of these communities is LGBTQI community. LGBTQI are abbreviations of a word to describe a certain group of people. It stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex. A community of individuals brought together by a social movements and a shared culture. These groups of people typically value pride, individuality, diversity, and sexuality. It is customary to see a rainbow flag proudly flown during Pride Month as a representation of the LGBTQI rights movement. Now, let us proceed to several types of gender based on a person's orientation. Number 1 is heterosexual. Heterosexual, also known as straight, is the most common type of gender. It is the type of people who are sexually or romantically attracted to their opposite sex. Number 2 is homosexual. Homosexual is a person who is sexually attracted to people of their own sex. Its classifications are gay and lesbian. Gay is male attracted to male, while lesbian is female attracted to female. Number 3 is bisexual. Bisexuality is a romantic and sexual attraction toward both males and females. Number 4 is asexual. Asexual means that you are incapable of being attracted to any sex. Other people don't turn you on and you don't relate to other people's sexuality. Number 5 is polysexual. From the prefix itself, poly means many, is defined by the attraction to multiple genders and identities. Number 6 is pansexual. Pansexual defines to include romantic sexual attraction and accommodation to people regardless of their sex and gender identity. Number 7 is transgender and transsexual. Transgender, just like the example that I already gave earlier, are those people whose gender do not match with their biological sex as male or female. Transsexual are the ones who usually seek medical assistance to help them align their body with their identified sex or gender through surgery, hormone treatment, and etc. That's all for my part. Thank you. Next up is socioeconomic class. Azel, it is now your turn.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Now let us proceed with socioeconomic class. Socioeconomic class is a social standing or status of an individual or group. And we have Global South and Global North. Global South, developing countries, a poor agricultural country that is seeking to become more advanced economically and socially. For example, Philippines is considered as a developing country because Philippines has high rates on unemployment and high population growth rate. Global North, developed countries, also called industrialized country, is a sovereign state that has developed economy and advanced technological infrastructure relative to other less industrialized nations. For example, Japan is considered as a developed country because it is one of the largest and most developed economies. People falling into different social classes are bound to experience life differently in terms of the following. Number 1, form of transportation. People falling into different social classes are bound to experience life differently in terms of their ability to pay what kind of transportation is suited to their budget. Some can afford to buy cars and vans, but the majority uses different kinds of transportation like buses, jeepneys, and tricycles. Number 2, type and amount of food that they can afford and consume daily. This depends on the number of members of the family. The more the members, the lesser the amount and the type of food that they can eat daily. Those in the upper class can choose what type of food they want to buy and eat, while those in middle and lower classes, they opt for food that are healthy and affordable. Determinants of one's social status. Income. People differ in the income they receive because it depends on their educational attainment and abilities. Value of assets and saving. The monetary amount of a person's riches due to his hard work and perseverance. Cultural interests and hobbies. Person's relaxation, fun, and enjoyment, whether imitated or done willingly. Economic status of his or her peers and relative. It pertains to the amount of wealth a clan have that can be inherited. 7-class system, Great Britain. Number 1, elite, the most privileged group, distinct from the other 6 classes through its wealth. Example of elites are military elites, priests or religious leaders, and political elites. These may be very powerful and oppressive and may exercise formal rule at a certain time or a place. Number 2, established middle class, the second wealthiest, the largest and most gregarious group. The vast majority of British people fall into this category, such as shop owners, white-collar professionals, literally those who wear a white collar like businessmen and office workers, teachers, journalists, and nurses. Number 3, technical middle class, small, distinctive, new class group which is prosperous but low for social and cultural capital. Now let us have Eric discuss the remaining class system.
Thank you for that, Aisel. Now proceeding to number 4, new affluent workers. They are an active group of young people that has medium levels of capital and higher levels of cultural and social capital. Number 5, traditional working class. It is often associated with blue-collar workers or manual labor. These are referred to the middle or lower. Consider that these are employees that do not have a degree or proper education. Number 6, emergent working class. This class has low economic capital but has high levels of emerging cultural capital and high social capital. Number 7, precariat. This is the lowest class in all of the 7. They have low levels of economic, cultural, and social capital. Now let's proceed to Philippine social class system. Number 1, mahirap. These are people that are barely making a living. Their jobs aren't apparent to last, and their income is very low. Just like the precariats in the Great British 7-class system, they have low levels of economic, cultural, and social capital. Number 2, medyo mayaman. They are the ones that are above the middle class and can afford a lot of items for their needs and are sometimes associated with the elites. Number 3, sakto lang. They are the middle class people. They have a stable income, not poor nor rich. They are able to afford their needs but cannot buy expensive goods. Number 4, mayaman. They are the elites of society. They have power and wealth in their hierarchy and are considered the most preeminent group in the Philippine social class system. Now let's proceed to British traditional 3-class system. Number 1, upper class. They are aristocrats in the 3-class system. It consists of the peerage, gentry, and hereditary landowners, and many more. Number 2, middle class. They are people with tertiary education. Many of them are professionals, businessmen, and industrialists. Number 3, working class. They are agricultural, mine, and factory workers. They are the labor-intensive class because they manually operate all of the country's agriculture. That's all, and the next part will be discussed by my other group mates.
Everything that makes up our sense of self are components of political identity. That's why there are political parties in the Philippines that promotes and negotiate for their sense of self as political vehicles to give opportunity to various sectors and to have their voices heard. Hi, I'm Darime Evangelista and I'm with my partner Isabel Poro to enlighten you about political identity. Now, political identity refers to the set of attitudes and practices that an individual adheres to in relation to the political systems and actors within his society. It is frequently referring to a specific political party affiliation or partisan identity.
In the Philippines, here are two examples of political parties, and these are ang Ladlad at ang Kabataan. Ang Ladlad is a party that negotiates for the welfare of the LGBTQI community. This political party fights for the rights of the LGBTQI community by doing activities that is empowered by the unity of its members. In Tagalog, ladlad means the unfurling of a cape, and it has come to signify coming out. Ang Ladlad Party List was formed by a group of activists in an inspired attempt to exploit the idiosyncratic Filipino electoral system, which reserves a certain number of seats for special interest groups. On the other hand, Kabataan is a party that promotes youth empowerment. Lahat ng issue ng bayan ay may kinalaman sa kabataan. Kabataan Party List has been some of the most productive lawmakers in the country. Kabataan Party List principally authored 670 bills and co-authored 22 bills. Next, our sense of self influences our politics and politics influences our sense of self. Like religion as political identity, religion plays a big part influencing their followers. People are more to vote for a representative who shares their religious identity, and an individual has the choice to choose their political identity, such as communism, democracy, and socialism. Communism, in simple terms, is a type of government as well as an economic system. In this system, people do not own land, machineries, or factories. You're next, Dari.
Democracy. Democracy, government of the people, by the people, for the people. Democracy was coined from demos, means people, and kratos means rule. Democracy means rule by the people. People living in the democratic country choose to deliberate and decide legislation or to choose governing officials to do so. These decisions are made via either a vote of the people in a direct democracy. Moreover, not all democracy is the same in every country. Here are some countries with full democracy as their government: Norway, Iceland, Sweden, New Zealand, and Canada. As you may notice, Philippines is not included in the examples of countries with full democracy, and that is because Philippines has flawed democracy as its form of government according to World Population Review. Flawed democracy means that our nation where elections are fair and free and basic civil liberties are honored but may have issues like media freedom infringement. Socialism. Socialism is a populist economic and political system based on collective, common, and public ownership of the means of production. A political and economic theory of social organization which advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. It is a system in which property and the means of production are owned in common, typically controlled by the state or a government. Socialism is based on the idea that common or public ownership of resources and means of production leads to a more equal society. Thank you for listening. The next topic will be discussed by Mr. John Paulo Olan.
Thank you, Miss Poro and Miss Evangelista. Now with the fourth and last one in social differences is the religion. When you think of religion, what comes to your mind? Religion is a group of people sharing the same beliefs and practices related to sacred things like worshiping a god. One of the earliest forms of religion revolved around making sense of natural occurrences such as extreme weather conditions, natural and man-made calamities, sickness, and even death. The idea that Paleolithic art is based in religious beliefs isn't new. But for years, anthropologists and archaeologists and historians of art understood these artistic manifestations as purely aesthetic and decorative motifs. An example of this is the Sorcerer of Legabio. This artwork depicts the supernatural ability of a religious practitioner to become half man and half animal. There are two types of religion: monotheistic and polytheistic. Monotheistic is a term for belief system that believes in single god or deity. There are religions that can be considered as monotheism. They are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The other type of religion is polytheistic. Polytheistic is a belief system that believes in multiple gods or deities. There is a prominent example of religion that is polytheism, and that is Hinduism. As we can see in this figure, Christians are the largest group in 2015 with a total of 31.2% in world population, and that is according to Pew Research Center. Coming in with her information about the next topic is my group member, Jersey Katibo.
Ethno as a word-forming element means race culture. The word ethno comes from the Greek term to a people, nation, or cultural grouping. On the other hand, the centric comes from the Latin that refers to the center. The term ethnocentrism was first coined by William Graham Sumner in 1906. In this writing, he discussed the concept between group fighting. He believed that evolution of warfare was due to ethnocentrism and xenophobia. Ethnocentrism is the view that one's own culture is better than anyone else's culture. As a practice, it consists of evaluating other cultures from the perspectives of one's own. Cultural relativism promotes greater appreciation of the other culture one's encounter along the way. For example, have you ever seen or have you eaten a food from another country, such as dry squid or fried crickets, and thought it was weird and gross? That is an example of ethnocentrism. That means you use your own culture as the center and judge other culture based on it. You are judging or making assumptions about the food of other countries based on your own standards, values, or beliefs. To avoid judging the cultural practices of groups that are different to yours, we can use the cultural relativism approach. This is refers to not judging a culture on your own standards of what is right or wrong, strange or normal. Instead, we should try to understand cultural practices of other groups in its own cultural context. The next topic will be discussed by Ms. Ashaira Gonzalez.
Thank you so much, Jersey, for explaining the cultural variation and cultural relativism. And now we're going to proceed to the appreciation of other cultures. Appreciation of other cultures have two complementary reasons. The first complementary reason is the acquisition of sufficient knowledge about the culture in question. In here, it could take place in indirect ways, such through reading about the rituals and practices of many cultures. But why is it so really essential for us to comprehend and be knowledgeable about various cultures? Simply, building bridges across cultural divides and learning to accept and value others who are different from us are all made possible with the aid of cultural understanding. The second complementary reason is direct exposure to other cultures. In here, it might happen as a result of immigration and travel. One instance of this is when you travel to another country and you witness or you participate in the performance of a set of practices. You can learn about what it is like to live in a civilization or community other than your own through traveling and embracing diverse cultures. Additionally, it makes you more tolerant of diverse culture, which can make it easier for you to interact with people from other backgrounds without encountering any difficulties or barriers. Another problematic method of human groups is rooted in race. The term race was used to classify people between the 17th and the early 19th centuries, and it was based on observable human characteristics and traits. These classifications merely reflect variations in skin tone, head size, height, body type, and other external physical characteristics. One example of this is the character of Ariel from The Little Mermaid. Some people dislike her due to her skin tone, and that is what we call racism. Another example, in other countries, the people who have white skin are favored more and valued the most, while those with less white skin, or what they refer to as black people, are frequently not acknowledged or addressed by professors or other people in positions of authority. The results of racial discrimination will be discussed by Ms. Alexa Carla Magdame.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gonzalez, for the introduction.
Now, let us proceed with the racial discrimination against individuals of African descent. For countless people of African descent were marginalized as part of the legacy of slavery and colonialism. These are a growing consensus that racism and racial discrimination have caused people of African descent to be held back in many aspects of public life. They have suffered exclusion and poverty and are often invisible in official statistics. There has been progress, but the situation persists to varying degrees in many parts of the world. And there are the results of racial discrimination. A. Lower household income of black families than their white counterparts. B. Lesser access to good education. C. Poor housing condition. D. Lesser to no access to healthcare system. Filipino have also been subject to various forms of racism, having been subjected to three major colonizing powers: Spanish, American, and Japanese. Arising from colonialism was a nationalistic push from people, Filipino scholars who sought to reframe the education system to better reflect their definition of the Philippines. Some scholars argued that there should be biological egalitarianism among humans to prevent further racism, a belief in human equality, especially with respect to social, political, and economic affairs. The term xenocentrism refers to the desire to engage in the elements of another culture rather than one's own. A preference for the foreign. We all know that some Filipino seem to be happy to pay more imported products such as canned goods, clothes, and other things, thinking that anything from another countries are better.
We just finished discussing the importance of cultural relativism in attaining cultural understanding. We hope you have a clear understanding of what we have discussed. Again, we are the Group 1, and we will always serve as your glasses to broaden your knowledge in areas where you are unclear and through which you will see your life. Thank you.